This is the Turin DF83 V2 coffee grinder, and as the name implies, it has 83mm flat burrs and is the bigger sibling to the 64mm line of DF coffee grinders by Turin, known as the DF64. Huge thanks to Espresso Outlet for sending me this grinder to check out, to review, to do this video on, but just like all my other videos, they're not paying me for this review, they're not sponsoring this video in any way, and they don't get to see this video before you do. Why are larger burrs better, you might be asking? Anything being better is a matter of perspective and how it fits into your daily use scenario. But in the case of coffee grinders, bigger burrs are generally better for a few actual facts. Larger burrs have more surface area on them, which means you can fit more teeth on the face of that burr, which in turn means the coffee will grind faster than its smaller burr counterpart. Now, that fact also hinges on the RPM and the motor that the burrs are paired with. But generally speaking, larger burrs do grind coffee faster. When it comes to taste though, it doesn't matter what size burrs or what style burrs your coffee grinder has, taste is subjective, and it comes down to what you like and what you prefer to taste in your coffees. I haven't seen any actual scientific data that states the fact that larger burrs always equals better flavor. As we all know, there are a lot of things that impact the flavor of our cups of coffee. The coffee you're choosing to brew, the water you're choosing to brew with, and the type of brewing method, for example, are all things that impact the flavor of your final cup of coffee. So when it comes to a grinder impacting, or should I say highlighting, the flavor notes in that coffee that you're brewing, grind quality and particle distribution matters a lot. So having a good quality grinder with properly aligned burrs that can produce nice, consistent quality grinds can improve overall flavor, in my opinion, more than just the size of the burr. That being said though, larger burrs do generally produce more consistent grinds, which positively impacts flavor. So arguably you could say larger burrs do generally produce a more pleasing flavor profile. With all that being said though, big burrs are very popular right now, and let's face it, they're freaking cool. So let's dive in and talk more about the DF83. As the title of this video states, this is the version 2 of the DF83. Now, there are some differences between the V1 and the V2 that we're going to go over, but just know that the V1 is no longer available. So if you go to Espresso Outlet to order yourself a DF83, any orders placed going forward are going to be for the version 2, which is a good thing because the version 2 is better. The version 2 is very similar to the version 1, but it does have an upgraded declumper, and it has a plasma generator, or ionizer, which helps reduce static in the exit chute. And as we all know, the DF line of grinders from Turin has had an issue with static from the first generation DF64. So I'm glad to see that they put an ionizer in it, and I hope that they keep continuing to put these types of things and these types of upgrades into their newer grinders coming out. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the static issue that I just mentioned, and you're probably also familiar with RDT. If you're not, RDT just stands for Ross Droplet Technique, and all it is doing a spritz or a little drop of water on your coffee beans before you put them in the grinder, and that greatly helps reduce static. Now, the DF83 does come with a spray bottle that they give you. However, I haven't had to use it, and in my opinion, I don't think you need to use it at all. Now, you can use it if you want, but I haven't done any RDT with this grinder since the first day of having it, and it has been super clean, and I'm super happy with, just how clean it is, not having to do RDT and work that into my, workflow or have that in my workflow anymore, and just overall, just the cleanliness of this grinder compared to every other Turin grinder, and especially the DF line of grinders that I've ever had or messed with. This thing is super clean, and it's much improved. The DF83 is marketed as a single dose grinder, but it does come with a hopper if you choose to use one. This is the hopper that it comes with, and it's fine. It's a hopper. It's nothing special. I do like that it has a trapdoor in it, which is cool. And basically all you would do is remove the bellows, and you would just have the hopper in here, and you can position it, rotate it, however you want, wherever you want the trapdoor. My only complaint with this hopper, and it's more of just a personal sort of aesthetic thing for me, but the fact that the grinder has a little bit of a forward lean, which is also to help with retention, but the hopper also has that same forward lean because it's mounted to the grinder. I think it would be cool, or it would have been cool, if there was a little bit more attention to detail and they made the bottom of this hopper neck angled so that maybe the hopper could sit in here a little more straight up and down. Now, I don't know. I don't know what looks goofier. Either way, having it angled and utilizing this hopper doesn't impact the performance of the grinder or, impact the performance of the hopper itself. So if you want to use the hopper, totally cool, comes with it. Now, because the DF83 is primarily marketed as a single dosing grinder, it does come with this nice bellows, and it also does come with a lid. Now, this is a wood lid. I know some of you out there probably don't like wood accent things with your coffee gear. I happen to like it. I don't think there's any other lid option available for this, at least not at the time I'm filming this, so If you don't like wood, unfortunately, the wood is what you're going to be stuck with, but there may be some aftermarket options out there, or I suppose you could, paint it black or something like that if you really wanted to. So as much as I do like the wood lid, I also really like this Option O style lid that was sent to me by Coffee Nerd Tools. You can check out his stuff. I'll have a link down in the description. But basically, this just replaces the stock lid at the top of the bellows, and you've got a nice opening with a funnel. You can just funnel your beans down in there. You can still do your bellows like normal, and it just speeds up your workflow, and it's a really nice addition to this grinder. So definitely check it out. The retention on this grinder is very good. The first couple times I used the grinder, it was like 0.3 grams, which isn't terrible, but now that I've been using the grinder for a while, I'm consistently getting 0.1 to 0.2 grams max of retention with this thing. And on several occasions, I've had zero retention at all. So this grinder is definitely, as states, when it claims to be a zero retention or a very low retention grinder. The button to start and stop the grinder is located right here on the base of the grinder, and it doesn't bother me. I know some people have a big issue with where certain things are placed on a grinder, like the buttons and stuff like that. This to me isn't bad. It's not difficult to me to be reach down here and just turn on and off the grinder. It seems perfectly fine. I do wish it had an auto shut off. These don't have an auto shut off or any sort of thing that senses resistivity in the burrs or anything like that to know when it's done grinding. So that'd be nice if it had that feature, but it's definitely not something that's a deal breaker. It's more than easy enough to obviously just push this button in and out to, turn it on and off. One thing I do have an issue with, though, on the exterior of this grinder is the power cord placement. I know a lot of other people have the same concerns with this. And it's not even so much that it's a concern, it's just that I don't really understand why they did this. Maybe there's some sort of, design reason and internal components reason why the cord couldn't come straight out the back, but it would be much better if the cord came straight out the back. It would be much easier to set up on your home coffee bar and kind of hide the cables and just overall, I think, have a generally cleaner look. Again, not one of those things that's necessarily a deal breaker. Just like the other DF line grinders, you've got Portafilter forks right here on the front. Now, I will say this, it does hold a Portafilter totally fine. I would definitely recommend holding onto your Portafilter. When you're dosing it in here, just hold the handle so it doesn't go anywhere. If you let go of it and it's rattling and grinding away and you're doing something else, there's a good possibility, even with these rubber grips that they have on here, there's a good possibility that this could vibrate out and fall down. Now, I haven't experienced that, but it is something just to kind of be aware of. For me, I prefer to just dose directly into the dosing cup and then dose my coffee into the Portafilter where I can use a bigger funnel or something like that if I want to. As far as the dosing cup that comes with the DF83, this is really nice. I like the robust aluminum, construction. It's very thick compared to the old clear plastic style that came on the older DFs. Now, I know some people did like the clear plastic ones. I don't necessarily have a problem with them, but after using this for a while now, this is really, really nice. I really like this. And I like that it comes with this extension collar, which helps kind of, get the dosing cup opening tighter and up closer to the exit chute, which does aid in this grinder's cleanliness. You don't have as many grinds kind of, that could potentially fly out of this gap here. The other thing that's cool about this collar is it also doubles as a Portafilter funnel or collar. So it doesn't fit in here like super great, but it does fit well enough to where if you didn't have a dosing funnel or something that you already own and like, you could potentially use that. Another feature that I really like on the DF83 is this dial indicator ring. The reason I like this so much is because aftermarket burrs are not all the same thickness. So if you did upgrade to different burrs in this, your 0 point might now be in a different orientation on the adjustment dial. And so having this and being able to change your adjustment point or your 0 point, I should say, wherever you want it, built into the grinder like this is really handy. The older DF grinders didn't come with anything like this, at least not that I'm aware of. They have just like a little notch here that you line up the tick marks on your dial adjustment ring. And speaking of the adjustment dial, I really like how easily legible this is. It's way better than the older DF line grinders. This is just much more clear, easy to read. Also, it's much easier to turn. And part of the reason that it's so smooth is because of this new designed wavy spring style washer that sits underneath here on the top of the grind chamber that evenly distributes, sort of the pressure that pushes down on the top burr, which we're gonna take a look at right now when we dive in to check out the burrs. All you gotta do is take off the lid, take off your bellows, in this case, take off your dial indicator, adjustment ring there, and then you're going to rotate the dial adjuster counterclockwise until it's no longer threaded on here anymore. And then you just pull it off and you've got access to the burrs. Now, you will notice there are two sort of rubber isolators here on either side of the top burr carrier. I like to just leave those in place so I know that they're not going to get lost or fall out. Now, it does come with extra of these rubber isolators, and it also does come with extra of the Portafilter fork rubbers there, which is great. But there's your top burr. Here is the wavy washer that I was talking about. This is really nice. So this helps to evenly distribute the pressure down on the top burr and make sure that it just stays nice and parallel and even, and there's not any possibility of, you know, this thing sort of getting weird and wonky and not sitting in there correctly. The older DF line grinders had sort of a 3-coil spring system that supported the top burr carrier, and sometimes it wasn't very smooth. It would maybe lean a little bit one way or the other. It would get hung up on the inside of your grind adjustment dial. But this is a much improved and much welcome improvement design to the DF grinders. So just like the version 1 DF83, the DF83 version 2 has the same 550 watt motor, which is a very strong, very good motor. I've not had any issues with it stalling, and this thing can grind super fine. So, and I mainly am doing light roast stuff. So no issues with the motor. 550 watt motor is a very strong motor. And I don't think that anyone using this in a home scenario, or even maybe a light duty commercial scenario, like a coffee cart or a, you know, pop-up coffee bar, something like that, would have any issues with, you know, this motor failing or having an issue. I think that this is going to be, you know, a motor and a grinder that has some good longevity to it and will last you a long time. This is probably the best Turin product build quality wise I've ever had or used. The paint on it's very nice, smooth finish. Everything is just really nicely made. Fit and finish is fantastic. It feels super robust and I have no complaints. Now, I haven't used the new DF64 P, E, or V, so I don't know about the build quality on those, but if this is any indication of what Turin's build quality is nowadays versus some of the older stuff, then I can't imagine those, you know, aren't just as good as this. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the alignment of your burrs is super important to, you know, good quality grinds and good consistent particle distribution. And I'm happy to report that the alignment on these burrs right out of the box was fantastic. I did the old dry erase, you know, alignment, burr alignment check, and it was spot on. I mean, it was like maybe one little spot that could have used a tiny little bit of adjustment, but it was so close and looked so good. I didn't bother doing any sort of alignment or anything on it. And I've been super happy overall with the cups of coffee I've been making with this grinder. So that speaks volumes, I think, to the quality control or just the overall build quality, especially versus some of the older DF line grinders that the DF83 has over those. It's, I would say, night and day better. So these are the standard option Automil 83 millimeter stainless steel burrs. Optioned with these burrs, this grinder is $5.99. You can upgrade to SSP high uniformity burrs for $9.25 US, which I think for getting a grinder of this quality with SSP burrs in it under $1,000 basically is a pretty good deal. I don't know that you're going to find much else out there in the way of, you know, a good high quality, durable, long-lasting grinder with a good motor and SSP burrs for under $1,000 is pretty killer. But even if you opted to go with the standard Automil stainless steel burrs, these are still very good burrs and you're still going to get very good cups of coffee. Now this grinder, especially with the standard burrs, does produce a fair amount of fines. It's not, you know, the most producing fines grinder I've ever had, but it's definitely not the least. It does a great job with espresso, and I would say that these burrs do a great job with more of a traditional style espresso shot. So if you like a little bit more texture, a little bit more body, and not quite as much clarity or acidity in your espresso, then you'll probably really love these burrs. These are not my favorite burrs when it comes to espresso, but it does do a very nice job. I've pulled some very tasty, good shots. You can brew great cups of filter coffee with this. They're just maybe not going to have quite the clarity or complexity that you would have with a cleaner, you know, burr that's more filter oriented that produces less fines. Switching back and forth on this grinder between espresso and filter is easy. I mean, like I said, the adjustment dial rotates very smoothly, very easily. The workflow on this grinder is clean and easy enough to where switching back and forth isn't a big deal. Some grinders are more frustrating to work with and are better suited to just kind of stay set up as a dedicated, you know, espresso grinder or dedicated, you know, brew grinder. But I think that, you know, if you wanted to use this on a daily basis, going back and forth between filter and espresso, it can do that. It's definitely something that it's designed to do. I still think that overall this grinder performs much better as more of an espresso focused grinder. But again, it is technically an all-around grinder, and it's easy enough to use and go back and forth between those grind settings that you could totally do that if you wanted to. Real quick before we wrap up, I'm going to show you guys, how loud this grinder is with and without coffee going through it. When I was funneling beans in here with the grinder running, which I prefer to do hot starts with grinders, it popcorns quite a bit. So that's where something like that Option O style lid that I was talking about earlier comes in handy, keeps it, from popcorning quite as much. You've got a much smaller hole in there that's sort of funneled down, or some sort of other, anti-popcorn device. Portafilter makes some really nice stuff that fit not only the DF83, but also the DF64. And he makes a whole range of really cool, 3D printed coffee stuff as well. So I'll make sure that I have both Coffee Nerd Tools and Portafilter's links down in the description, so you can check out some of the upgraded things that both of those guys make for these grinders and for other, coffee brewing stuff. If you're wanting a grinder primarily for filter brewing and only very occasionally, or don't do any espresso brewing at all, then I don't think this is the grinder for you. Now, if you're wanting to stay kind of in that $600 to $1,000 budget and you primarily do espresso, I don't think there's any better grinder you can probably get right now. The cleanliness of this, the workflow, the ionizer, the fact that it just performs overall much better on espresso than filter or other brewing methods, in my opinion, makes this a hard grinder to beat at that price point. Even with the standard burrs, you're gonna get a great shot of espresso with this grinder and decently good filter brews. But with those upgraded, SSP high uniformity burrs for a little more money, this grinder is kind of unbeatable in this price point. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the DF83. Do you have a DF83? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you have the standard burrs in it? Do you have upgraded burrs in it? What's going on in your DF83 world? Let us know in the comments. With that being said, we'll see you on the next video. Take care.